All right, so let's paint a cool jellyfish. I'm starting with a black canvas, so make sure you paint the whole canvas black and let it dry first. And then once you have that, we can add a little bit of like dimension to the background by creating another layer, and then we'll paint the jellyfish over that. So once you have it black and dry, you can do, one or two coats. It just depends on your preference and, however you want to do it. But we're going to take for our second layer after the first layer is dry, which is the black canvas, we're going to take our blue with a little bit of yellow, mostly blue and a little bit of yellow. So we have this like turquoise color and then a little bit of white. Now the key is I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, so we want it to look kind of smoky. I'm going to start in the upper kind of left area and just dust it on top of the black. I'm just doing like an X stroke, side to side. But yeah, it's going to create a little bit of a sort of a smoky back layer. Looks super cool. And I'm just pulling it from that space. You can go from the whole top. If you want it to pop a little more, like if it's not popping enough, you can always use a little bit more white, and the white will make it pop and stick out a lot more on that background. I'm just not mixing that much paint because I'm not using too much. I don't want it to be too thick. I still want it to look dark, so we're not trying to make it look a different color. We're just adding to that. Notice how I'm letting it be a little bit more intense through the middle, and then I want it more dark around the edges. That's pretty basic. I don't want to go further than that though, because it's just intended to be enhancing the dark canvas. We're not trying to change it 100%. I still want it to look really dark. And then we're going to layer on top of that. And I want the jellyfish to be like multicolored, like kind of rainbowy. But we're going to start with a light color because we do want this to pop on the black canvas. So if we start with a light color, all the colors we layer on top of it will pop a lot more on the black canvas. So you can go into like your Filbert paintbrush, which is just that rounded top brush I like using. Mine's not too big, not too small. It's like about the size of my pinky, and I have pretty small hands. And I'm going to go ahead and place the jellyfish, which again, I'm going to start with just mostly white. And I want a pinkish top to the jellyfish, so I'm going to add a little bit of red to it. But I want to start with a really light pink because I want a lot of white, because that white is what's going to pop against the dark canvas. And then we're going to create the top of the jellyfish. Now let's find the middle. So find the middle just so we know where it is. Make a little dot. I want the jellyfish to go above that and just slightly to the left, super slight. And then just we're thinking of like an umbrella kind of. So I'm going to go up a little bit to the left. And what you can do is make sure you're at least a couple inches over from the left, though. Don't go all the way off the canvas. And you're going to make like an umbrella, or just think of it as a rainbow shape. And my paint is still a little wet, but I don't really care because this is my first layer. And then from there, I can make kind of little kind of rippled lines. Like you can make little smiley faces that go across like that. And then that would be like a totally awesome little bottom to put, no big deal. And then for the back of it, you want to do the same. So I'm just going to make a parallel line behind the first, or underneath the first one. That's it. So that's going to be our first layer, and I'm going to color the top in only. Just the top, not that second layer. Let's leave that not colored in. And I didn't let the paint underneath dry before it, so it's gonna mix in a little bit, which I think is gonna be fine because we're just doing our first layer, so we're gonna layer upon this anyways. And then with the same color, what I'm gonna do is pull from the first layer of this shape, so the one that we blocked in, use the edge of the brush, and you're just gonna wiggle and let it like meander down like that. So it can be as crazy as you want. I'm gonna do a few, some can be a little thicker and they can intertwine. Just wiggling and letting it, I don't know, I'm like just doing whatever I want here. This is what's so fun about painting jellyfish. So you can do like a little bit more of that if you want. I'm just creating like really loose wiggles, very, not too much paint either. And now we have our base for the jellyfish. Now, if we want to change the shape or make it a little bit different, we can. So I'm going to play with the bottom a little bit, adding more little lines before I go back into the top so that this has a chance to dry a little bit. And what I can do is use my white with some blue. So I'm going to do like a light blue color. So we're just changing colors. We're going to make this kind of rainbowy, which will look fun. And then what you can do is pull from the bottom of that shape. You can pull little tiny lines that wiggle and coming out. So this is so, I feel like painting this kind of thing is so therapeutic because you get to do different colors, different lines, and you really just let it be kind of crazy and wild, and it's so relaxing to do that. And they can intertwine. So easy. But notice how that glows a little bit more. It's kind of cool. And then again, some of those lines are going to be coming off the top rainbow part, and then some will come off the bottom. So we can even, let's like outline it just a little bit so we know where we're going from. I'm using the blue. I'm going to outline the top of that little umbrella type shape right there that I just did, and then the bottom or the back. So these lines are coming out of both the top and the bottom line right here. So I have some that come like this, and then I have some that come from here. So you can change it. And you can even have some that kind of wiggle and pull up. Maybe they're floating. And do not feel like you have to copy what I'm doing exactly. You just put it wherever you want. That's kind of gonna make it way funner. So do that. And then everything that's coming from behind, we're going to be painting over this again to make it look like the stuff that comes out of the middle, the thicker ones, is actually coming out of this top part and covering the back line. So it'll change the way it looks. But you can begin to use this color to create some little lines in the jellyfish, the idea of some lines. So if you pull from the top center and then you make little, it's like I said, it's really similar to an umbrella type thing. You make little lines coming down. And there's a lot of different kinds of jellyfish. It's kind of a trip. But I can like puff this out a little more and like wiggle the shape. We can even change the shape a little bit. So see how I can like change the movement there. And now I've added a whole nother layer of this light blue around the outer edge. So we're just gonna slowly build. And now that we have that, we're gonna clean the brush. I'm gonna make a different color. I'm gonna do kind of a peach color. So we're gonna take the Filbert again, because I wanna create some more of those bigger lines. I'm gonna do red and, oops, I accidentally got some blue in there. I just want red and white plus a little bit of yellows to go into peach. So red and white and yellow. So it should look kind of peachy. And then we're going to take this and pull it from more of like the top or the middle part of this space. And you can go over some of your pre-existing movements that you already did, or you can create something new altogether. And you can make it look different. Like, so maybe I want it to look a little more dark. So if I could add more red and yellow into that, it'll get a little darker. And then you can play. So you want there to be like these things looking like kind of different shades coming out of the center here. See how it kind of comes out, and it's a little thicker right here, and then the rest you can kind of see around the edges, the back of the jellyfish shape. Just meandering. Just wiggle, wiggle and pull. Twist the brush a little, let it kind of do some different funky things with the paint. Let some of the paint be kind of thick so it creates a different look. Super fun. Now that same color, I can take some of that into the body part or the top part. Not sure what we're going to call this. I don't know if jellyfish have bodies. I don't know what they're called. Should look these things up. But this top part here, just to add some of the color from down here up here. It's really cool. And so far so good. We have like a decent base shape and some base colors to build off of. We want to add some more shadows and good stuff in there. I'm going to blow dry it so that it's easier to layer. So either you can just take a break and let it dry, or you can hit it with the blow dryer to make it go faster. So now that it's pretty dry, we're going to go in and add some shadows to all of this. And I'm going to use purple and the small round brush. So make sure your small round brush is clean and dry. And we're going to do our blue and red mixed together. The purple is just a really great shadow color. So we have to have some dark parts in it. And we don't want it to be like darker than black, because then it will just blend into the background. So maybe adding just a tiny bit of white into your purple. You just take a little bit of white, mix it in. It'll still look like a shadow compared to how bright these colors are, but it'll look like a shadow in comparison, but it won't be blending in with the black so that you don't see the difference between the jellyfish and the background. So we want to do this along the bottom of the shape here. So I'm going to go in and kind of re-establish the bottom of the shape And again, some of that first layer can show through a little bit. We're not trying to completely cover that up, but then I can pull little bits of paint up into the body shape or the top umbrella shape. It's like little pulls coming up. Not anything too crazy though. And you can do that from the top too. So if I want to take a little bit of that darker color and pull it down through those umbrella shapes here, just to make some marks, some different colors, different shades. We can do that. So it's like umbrella spokes, pulling from the top center down to those little wiggly lines. And do a little bit of the shadowing along the back part. And even within this shape here. So you might want to change it a little bit though, coming down here. Maybe I'll add a little more red so that the shadow looks a little different. And then I can go along these shapes just a little bit to add some different shades. So see how I can add it into these movements. Just along the edge maybe, or, you know, play around a little bit to see what works for your painting. But it's not, you're not covering, they're not taking it over completely. So be careful. You don't want it to take away from what you're working with here, because it could start to get kind of overpowering. And you can take that same color, shadow color, up as well, just to spread it around so it's not just in the bottom. So you can always kind of spread your colors around a little bit just to give them a voice. And then clean it. I'm going to go back. I want to add some more pink, just red and white. I'm going to add this to the top. So just coming in and adding little lines, pulling down, like let it mix in with the other colors. Try not to, you want to see what we put there, but you do want to make it pop. So you want to make sure we add, the more colors we add, the more rich it's going to look. So anything that looks like really dull or transparent, you should definitely add a little touch to that. Give it a little more love. You can do some of this to the back layer. And you can add some of this into these little shapes coming down. So it's going to add some of that pop of pink. It's really cool. Just wiggle the brush, layering. And then clean the brush again. Just this back and forth process for a little bit. I'm going to clean the brush. And then let's do some more like blue and white. So we're just going back to those first colors we used. And then maybe I want to enhance adding that back into the top shape. But this time it's going to show up as a little bit brighter because, you know, we're layering. That's what happens when you layer. I'm just making little streaks that move in the direction. And then you can add to those little streaks. And sometimes you gotta like roll the brush in the paint like this to get the point nice and fine, but to make sure you have a decent amount of paint on the tip to give you a nice fluid line with that small brush. Sometimes that's it takes a little bit of practice. I'm gonna do a little bit of like yellow. So I want to pull some yellow and white. Maybe with just a little touch of red. So it's kind of similar to the peachy color, but there's just more white and yellow and a tiny bit of red. And then you can add to more of this kind of thing here, more wiggling in this spot. I said the more shades, the merrier. It's going to look really fun. And then some to the top. But not too much. Just add a little pop there. And then you can do some white. Maybe some pure white is going to be helpful to get just like a nice radiating outline. So I can kind of outline the top here. And just get this all glowing looking. So if I put a little kind of outline of that, it gives it this glow around the edge. And then you can even add some to the shape, but you can even add some little dots. So I can go in and just do some like little dots following those lines. Following those little umbrella spoke lines that we've been making. There's like a million different kinds of jellyfish with lots of different designs and intricacies. So you can really take this and make a little fantasy about it. It doesn't really have to be a certain way because there's so many different jellyfish. And I can go along the edge of the bottom and make a little dotted line. So you can just make it kind of dotted. Maybe you don't like that, you don't have to. And I can even do some of the dotting like out in the background for fun. Just following some of those lines. So it's almost like you're making like little dotted lines. But you can also do like, this will be fun if you do your light blue. And if I do like a little dot right here and then rub it out a little bit. So see how I can make a dot and then rub it out. And I can do that over here. And do another one here. So do that wherever you want. I'm going to create, like if you're under the ocean, there's lots of like little particles floating around and you kind of see a lot of weird stuff. And this is kind of a cool way to mimic a little bit of that nuance going on. It's very galactic down there. So maybe you want to make it look a little bit like interesting using these kinds of techniques. These are similar to the kinds of techniques I sometimes use when I'm making a galaxy. So some can be big, some can be small. You're just making different little things, little mudges. And then you can add like a little dot if you want to make it look a little more pronounced. You can make it a little dot towards the center so maybe it looks like a little glowing particle. Or you can just leave it smudged. It's up to you. So the white will just enhance it, or you can keep it with the blue. So maybe you want to keep it with the blue. And just paint over the white. If the white gets a little too bright and you want it to look more subtle, a light blue is going to give you more of a subtle look. So you can decide what works for you. And just like maybe lots of little dots to kind of give it, make it look like stuff's going on there. And then again, if you don't like having the dots in this space, he could always just paint over them and turn them into those tentacle things. I'm going to have a little bit of dotting just for fun. I'm using like light blue. And then maybe, you know, just take a little bit of white and you can always just do some highlighting in this, these like big tentacle things. Just let it kind of smear and smudge and wiggle and pull. Be really interesting and crazy. There's so many things you can do in this space. But I suggest, you know, again, you can even touch up the background thing that we did in the beginning where you took some blue and yellow and a little bit of white, that green kind of texture we put in the background. Maybe you want to use a little bit more of that and kind of can smooth over some of those little dots if you don't like those, or just brighten that up, that technique, or make those look more subtle. So see how I painted that over a little bit and then it kind of changed its vibe. Anything we've done, you can touch up, like with whether it's the background around, whether it's layering on top of the jellyfish itself. So fun. I'm just kind of adding some more of this. Some of the dots like felt a little contrived to me, so then I would just add some of that background texture over it so that you still kind of see that, but it's not like as like dotty. It's a little more blended and smudged. Excuse me, into the background. So that's always fun. And then, yeah, I would just add, make sure you have like, I'm just doing some of that background smudging color on those dots. I still want to see some of the dots, so I'm not eliminating them completely. I'm just making them a little more toned down. And then also the other fun thing about doing a black canvas painting is that you can always take any brush you want, you know, small brush, whatever, and take your black paint, and then maybe some of the stuff got a little, like some of your lines got a little too thick. You can just go in with the black and clean up those lines, like paint around them, make them look more delicate and thin. Maybe you don't like some of the dots that you painted, you can paint over those. So see, I can just erase that. Maybe I don't want these white ones right here. I kind of like to show you how you can go back and forth with different ideas. I think a lot of people freeze up and feel like they have to commit to something before they do it. And you really don't. I mean, if you don't like what turns out, just change it. And that's going to be a way better solution than not trying anything. And then your painting is like taking no risks. Let's see, I could take the black over that background texture, and like maybe it got a little too bright in some spots. You can always use the black to tone it back down. So you do want, you know, to have that dark background. So don't go overboard with that turquoise coming on top, where it could really end up diminishing or taking away from the jellyfish, which is what we want to be the focal point. So see, I can just take the black back in and just kind of feather it in the same way we put the green in and make it look a little more toned down again. So it's all up to you how you want to play around here. But I suggest exploring, playing, you know, trying different things, seeing what you like, going back and forth between your colors a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit more pink because I really want this to kind of be like pinkish. And I'm just using the like little round brushes, things like that. So it's not like anything too complicated. But maybe sometimes when you do this layering, it can get kind of cluttered or there's just too much going on. So you can paint over some of those dots, or you can just add some more brightness with the pink, cover over some of the other colors. Maybe I go back into that purple again. Tone that down. I'm kind of just painting over some of these white dots because I kind of feel like, I don't know, I'd rather it not be like that. I might do some more dots, but I might do a different color. I just don't want it to be white. So that's the other thing. You know, you can change it. Maybe I want orange dots. I'm gonna do that. So red and yellow in your small brush. And then maybe we'll do a couple of little dots, but that are like orange. And maybe they're a little bigger. Now this will just show up as the same kind of idea, but it's more subtle. So this is where we play. It's just a play. Well, all we're ever doing is just playing here. And again, that orange can pull down into these shapes, wiggle, you know, sometimes when I pull a different kind of shade in, I try to spread it around just a little bit so it doesn't feel like all alone in that spot. You're like, okay, I had some friends now. And then if you want to take anything else in, blue, yellow, you can use light blue, anything we've used, and then just layer a little bit. And then you just got to get to the point where you're going to be done with it. I might just do a couple little more like bright, like light, super light pink or light blue highlights. Doing like a light pink. I'm going to go up here and add a little bit top. But I'm going to let it go. I don't want it to be too complicated.